What's up everybody, it's Joe here with Joseph Blake Photography, and in today's video we're going to be talking about new, much more believable leaks that we have about the rumored release of the R6 Mark III, Canon's most popular hybrid camera. Let's talk about it. So I'm Joe, I am a portrait and adventure photographer here in Las Vegas, Nevada, and this is my channel where we talk about tech and news and gear, reviews, how-tos, we go on adventures, and if you are a content creator, whether it's here on YouTube or elsewhere in social media, we talk about the things that relate to the things that we do, as well as the gear that we use, and if that's the kind of thing that you're into, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and if at the end of the video you thought that I have done a good job at giving you information that was helpful for you, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button. Most importantly, it would seem the YouTube algorithm is telling me that if you watch to the end of the video, that's actually gonna do the most for me, so I'd appreciate it if you did that. At the end of the video, we're gonna be talking about some potential lenses that we might be seeing at the end of this month. Obviously, you can follow all of my social medias down below, but let's jump into talking about this camera. So this is not the first video that I have done talking about the R6 Mark III. Just so you know, my background in the Canon world, I have been shooting Canon now for 15 plus years. I started with the Rebel XSI or the 450D, and while I have shot with many Canon cameras, I have personally owned the 7D, the 6D, the 6D Mark II, the R, the R6, the R6 Mark II, which I'm filming this on right now, and the R5. If I'm not here in the studio shooting a video on the R6 Mark II, I'm normally out in the wild shooting portraits or landscapes with the R5. I love the R6 Mark II. I think it was a great update to the R6, and I'm excited to see now what we have with the R6 Mark III. Now, some of the information that we have is new, or at least a little bit different, and some of it is about the same. So we're still expecting that 24 megapixel sensor borrowed from the R3. We now have an official designation with some regulatory filings for the camera, saying that it will be coming with the LC1720, which was the registered sensor before we got the R3. Also hearing that we will be getting a bump from 7.5 and 8 stops of image stabilization to 8.5 stops, similar to the R5 Mark II and the R1. And we're hearing for the first time that it will include the Digic accelerator chip, which means that it will inherit the focus system from the R5 Mark II and the R1 with its AI-driven focus tracking model. Now, while the R6 Mark II right now can shoot 30 frames per second in electronic, it can actually shoot up to 40 frames per second electronic. We're now hearing that at 30 frames per second, it will be able to shoot 14-bit RAWs. Whereas right now, I believe that drops down to 12-bit in the H+ or high plus shooting mode. In addition to the focusing system, it will be inheriting, as a result of that Digic accelerator chip, it will be inheriting that noise reduction performance using AI-driven neural networks. It will also incorporate that high resolution mode that we saw in the R5 Mark II and the R1. So basically it sounds like incorporating the sensor from the R3 along with the Digic accelerator from the R1 and the R5 Mark II. We're going to be getting all of the things that we've seen announced this summer from those two cameras, as well as the image performance that we saw in the R3 when it was announced. So none of these specs are a surprise given those facts, but to be quite honest, I'm kind of surprised that they're incorporating the Digic accelerator, kind of surprised that they are giving it the R3's sensor. But good surprise, this is great. Where we get some really interesting information is moving into the video side of things. Now, the R5 Mark II saw a significant bump in its kind of cinema capabilities, taking most of what was in the R5C, rolling it into the R5 Mark II, making the R5C kind of redundant and no need for an update, especially considering the fact that we have the C70 Mark II. So we'll be seeing some new cinema codecs in this camera, specifically the XF AVC-S and XF HEVC-S recording formats, with the ability to record in two new 4K modes. One of which will be an oversampled 6K into a Cinema 4K or DCI 4K, which is a wider frame at 4096 pixels, but they are adding a 4K 120 option, although that Cinema 4K 120 will only be available in a Super 35 crop. It will also be adding a RAW mode, which currently you can only shoot with an external recorder on the R6 Mark II. So on the R6 Mark III, you will get RAW light in 6K 30 and 4K 60. although again, it will also be in a Super 35 crop. So just to recap, this camera will be inheriting the sensor from the R3. It will be getting the digic accelerator from the R5 Mark II, along with its focus system, improved image stabilization, new recording modes, including 4K 120 and 6K 30 Lite, though in a Super 35 crop. No word in this particular batch of rumors about the I/O on the camera. My assumption, again, is that they will be upgrading this to full-size HDMI, and that we'll be getting one CF Express slot to replace one of the SD card slots. Also, I would just expect, honestly, this to require the new E6P battery for most, if not all, of these features to function. As I mentioned in the top of the video, the next bit of Canon news that we have is there is an event scheduled for October 30th that they describe as something hybrid this way comes. They're trying to be spooky with lens announcements. And in their imaging, they show us 5 lenses. 2 of them have already been announced. One is the 24 to 105 f2.8, and the other is the 35 1.4. So if we look at the lineup of lenses and what we've had or seen rumored in the past, and honestly, if we just look at this image, it looks like we're going to be getting telephoto zoom, and we're going to be getting 2 primes. The 2 primes, honestly, again, if you look at the lineup and what we've seen, is a 24 and a 50 millimeter 1.4. The 50 millimeter 1.4, if you remember back in the day, you had the cheap 1.8 that was called the Thrifty 50. That was the best lens that you could get for the money. It was like the first lens that everybody got outside their kit lens, the 1.8 50 millimeter. Phenomenal lens. Then you had the 50 1.4 EF, which people called the Nifty 50, because it was still like $400 or $500, and it was still a phenomenal lens. It was their USM gold ring lens. It wasn't quite L, but it was phenomenal. And then you had the 50 millimeter 1.2 that was loud and slow and difficult sometimes to manage. It was also very heavy, but it was a phenomenal portrait lens, don't get me wrong. It looked amazing. It was a lot of lens. And so now it looks like we're finally going to be getting 50 millimeter 1.4, likely L, with all of the trappings that you would expect for the RF mount, as well as a 24 millimeter 1.4, which anyone who shoots primes, especially if you're a landscape photographer or a street photographer, I don't know that I would use that lens for portraits necessarily. You're gonna get some weird face stuff, but it is a phenomenal lens on the EF mount, and super excited to be seeing the 24 mm 1.4 in the RF mount in the L variety. There's already a silver ring RF that is super lightweight and inexpensive and still a great lens, but not that red ring level pro that we've been waiting for. So I think that those are the 2 primes that we're going to be getting, the 50 millimeter 1.4 and the 24 millimeter 1.4, which leaves us with our telephoto. I did a video about this a while back. I think we're going to be getting that 70 to 200 f2.8 USM IS-Z. It's going to be compatible with their remote zoom system. You can kind of even see it in the image. It looks like it's attached there on the side. This will be that internal zoom model, and I think it's coming in black. So if you've been waiting for a Z lens from Canon in the 70 to 200 range, this is going to be it. We'll have more info about that once it comes out, but again, that has been announced for the 30th of October. I'll do a deep dive into those lenses when they are officially announced, but that's it for me on this video. If you found this interesting, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. And remember, at the beginning of the video, I asked if this was informative for you, please hit the like button. If you made it this far, I very much appreciate it, because honestly, that's what the YouTube algorithm cares about. Find all my social media links as well as the gear that I use down below. If you want to check out my photo adventure trip to Tahoe, it's right there. If you want to subscribe to the channel, go ahead and click right there. And I will see you in the next one. Thanks again for watching.